guys, we're here with episode 4, and today's guest with us is going to be performance specialist Tristan Cook. So, Tristan, welcome to the podcast.
What's up?
Tristan has been a performance coach with us for how long now?
Last September?
Yeah, since September. He started with us, like most of our coaches, as an intern. Non-traditional intern. You were an intern a while ago. It was like
4 or 5 years ago now, or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
He interned with us when we were out of our old Blue Ash location, and then we had an opening last fall, and that's when you came back on board. And happy to have you. You've been a great addition to the team. So, without further ado, we're gonna kind of hit them with similar questions. We're gonna dive into kind of what makes us unique here is, I think each of our coaches have kind of a subspecialty, and we're going to kind of get into that a little bit. For those of you who aren't as familiar, Tristan has kind of become the point person for Milford High School. We support Milford High School's strength and conditioning program, and Tristan's kind of taken that over because he's a former Eagle himself, graduated from Milford High School. When did you graduate?
2014.
2014. Makes me feel really old. But, okay. Yeah, feel free to laugh. This is supposed to be funny.
Oh, boy.
Funny and fun. So, what I want to get into, and the first question I've kind of been asking everybody, Tristan, is what makes you coach? Like, why, out of everything that you could be doing with your life, are you a strength coach right now?
So, for me, I always, I played a lot of sports growing up, so on and so forth, and then the whole way up, I was like, I just want to keep playing, And then some point around, junior, senior year of high school, I realized, this is not gonna work. I'm not gonna be able to play sports for that long. So I was like, okay, I'll start coaching. My original goal was I wanted to become a college basketball coach or a high school basketball coach. So I went to CCU, or Cincinnati Christian University, which is not a thing anymore, but went there, was the basketball manager at the time, and I was like, at the time, the coach who was there said that he would let me help with film because I told him my goals and so on and so forth. Then that coach became the president, so then I was just the manager, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I bailed out, took about a semester off, started doing research, and I was like, I would really like to do PT and stuff like that. So then went up to Ohio State, got my undergrad in health and rehab sciences, started to learn more about the strength and conditioning and coaching world, and coaching is something that I always wanted to do because I enjoy good coaches and tried to learn how to push and help people to get where they wanted to be. So then I got back and I was like, well, what do I want to do? And then the opening opened up and I was like, hey, this is super sweet. This is kind of what I wanted to do. So I was like, let's go for it. So here we are, just trying to help as many people reach their goals and do whatever I can to help.
I think you touched on something that now, honestly, I'd never heard that story before. I didn't know you even went to CCU, but
there you go.
Learn something new all the time. You touched on something that really I hadn't even thought about, and that is our entire staff now has a background in kind of rehab, or at one point was either an athletic trainer, wanted to be an athletic trainer, went through athletic training school, went through some sort of rehabilitative science, or wanted to be a PT. And I think that's, now that I hear you say that, that's one of the things that I think separates us, is our knowledge in the body is a little bit more in depth because we've gone through that. Especially being able to connect the pieces when people go, well, this hurts, this doesn't feel good, how do we kind of progress and regress it? But something that I want to touch on that kind of everybody else has is, can you think back on your experience as an athlete? And for those that don't know, obviously you played basketball.
Yeah.
I know you played lacrosse. Did cross country as well?
Yeah, did a cross country for 4 years and then track for 3 years too.
Okay, so those were the kind of four.
Those were the four main ones, yeah.
Okay. And out of those four, which one would you say was your best sport?
My best sport was probably lacrosse. That was probably the one I was most naturally, the best at, most gifted at. I played basketball the longest, and so a lot of people, when I talk to people, I talk a lot about basketball because that's just what I know, and that's what I did a lot of. So, my grandpa was a coach growing up. My uncle played pro ball in, Australia. So, I was just like, grew up basketball, like this is what it is. So, but then I played lacrosse 6th through 8th grade and started most of the way up. And then some things happened. I didn't get to play most of high school. Came back senior year and then managed to like come back and start for most of the year. So I was like, all right, cool. But that's what I would say I was the best at, even though I was the most consistent at basketball and cross country, because, you know, running's not that hard. You just go outside and you run. It is what it is.
Hey, I give you props. There's no way I would have ever ran for fun in that aspect, at least for a competitive reason. So,
100%.
There's a reason I liked baseball. Now, with that being said, the big question that I'm trying to get out of people is, can you share with us any like hardship you had to overcome as an athlete, whether it be an injury, bad coaching, or something that you overcame in your athletic career that would be a benefit for the athletes that are listening to this podcast that could help them get over some sort of situation or hardship that they're having to deal with? Now, obviously, all of us are dealing with hardship right now because as we're recording this, we're still in the middle of a pandemic and everything's still shut down. But putting that hardship aside, like, what is there a story that maybe sticks out in your mind that you might be able to share with everybody?
There's really, like, the two main things I can think of was, and they probably kind of go back to the same thing. So for anybody that doesn't like know, I have like a genetic disorder, so my vision isn't always the greatest. Like, I went legally blind when I was 11, so on and so forth. Got most of it back, but when I play sports or I run or do physical activity for a long time, it gets a little blurry. So one of the main stories that I have is like when I came back to lacrosse, because 6th through 8th grade it kind of didn't matter that much. I didn't like notice it as much, but when I came back senior year, one of the main things was like me being able to see the ball and being able to actually catch it. Like, because the way my vision works, I couldn't focus on the ball. Someone could be throwing it from 50 yards away and it would get to here, and then I would see it and I'd have to try and catch it and like come out. So surprisingly I did okay at that, but that was the biggest thing, was just trying to learn, like having to overcome like, okay, well, can't see this, can't see what people are trying to point at, so gotta try and more learn like different ways to do it. So if the ball is coming, I see someone throw it and it's coming towards me, I know I need to start getting ready to like move my stick in a certain way or have it propped down so that I can move it quicker. Or if someone's like, you need to go here and try to point it out, I can't see where they're trying to point out, so I need to focus more and practice and learn the different spacings and the different sets that we run and different defenses so that I actually know where I need to go ahead of time. And I know what's supposed to happen, and then I can base my decisions off of that quicker, so that if I can't see what's happening, then I can base it off of that. The other one, pretty similar. I had my junior year of cross country, I went and I ran, it's like the first race of the year, and I had a lot of tightness in my chest and I didn't know what it was. And then it kept happening for multiple runs after that, so I went to the hospital to get it checked out. They ran like an EKG, stress test, all that stuff. Couldn't figure out what it was. So technically my genetic disorder can affect my heart too and my hearing. So we just figured it had something to do with that just randomly. So I had to sit out for a good amount of that year. And that was really frustrating because that was probably the best year I was going to have running wise. And I wasn't a very fast runner for anybody that doesn't know. But that was probably the best year I was going to have. And then I had to sit out for most of it. So the biggest thing for me after that was, I'm going to blow it up in track, and I'm going to go out there and actually like all winter, because usually in the winter I would play basketball and I wouldn't focus on it as much, but I knew I was probably going to get cut that year, junior year, and I was just going to play rec again. So I'm like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to focus on my conditioning for track. And so I'd run every day with everyone, which I didn't used to do the 2 years before that, freshman, sophomore year. The trainer at the time at Milford, my buddy was coming off a meniscus tear, and I had study hall 7th period, and they would rehab it and go swim 2 days a week. So I'd go swim 2 days a week with them too and run. And I started trying to lift more and do more strength training. And so I built it up, and that junior track season, I did great. And I was like flying. It was probably the best time I ever had running, but that was, just the work ethic thing is something that I learned from that.
Well, I have to say, I'm sure our listeners think the same thing. Like, that's probably the hardest thing any of us have heard somebody having to come overcome is going blind, and possible heart issues. And it kind of puts things in perspective a little bit for people, I think, when you can hear of people that overcome an issue like that. Like, just hearing you talk about that is like you had to adapt as an athlete and become extremely good with your reaction time because you couldn't see the object until it was right in front of you. And you, like you were talking about, you adapted how you kind of held on to the lacrosse stick in order to give you more reactive ability. And I think you made a very good point there of you have to understand and learn the team chemistry a lot more because you have to understand where everybody is going to be positionally. And so if you don't take the time to do all those things, so I think some of the stuff you touched on there is like, well, from a teamwork aspect, I have to lean on my team in this situation. And then personally, you have to be able to persevere and not give up. I think most people out there, if they know with increased activity they're going to go blind or it's going to be a detriment of their vision, probably aren't going to play a sport where balls are being thrown at them.
Yeah.
Like, it's probably most people.
I got hit by a few. It's not exactly great. It's not super fun.
So, I mean, that really speaks testament to your perseverance as a person, and I think in the small amount of time that I've known you, it shows when I see you out on the coaching floor or when I've seen you kind of struggle to overcome with different things, and I think it all ties back to that. And it's one of the reasons I've asked all of our coaches that have been on now, kind of, tell me about your injuries. Tell me about what you've had to overcome, because I think a lot of us have had to overcome obstacles in our life that have kind of set us up to be a coach, right?
Yeah.
Because someone that's a coach is someone that has life experiences that they're going to draw back on. So for you to overcome an injury, or not an injury, but a situation like that, you had to have had a good coach along the way to help guide you. Otherwise, I think most coaches would be like, well, he's not going on the field.
Yeah.
You know? So to have somebody in your corner to allow you to kind of overcome and adapt adversity, I think is huge.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing your story there. What I wanted to go on next is kind of, I think from our viewpoint, like Peyton and Josh are the soccer people, right?
Yeah.
Peyton can cross into baseball because she has knowledge in that. We can all cross into any sport we want to. But I think it gives us all credibility that we know a sport because we played it, so we have a little bit more credibility because we kind of know the ins and outs more. So from your perspective, we'll just start with basketball, right? Because I know you still play basketball. Even though you played lacrosse, you ran track. I kind of feel like basketball is what you have more of a passion for.
It's kind of what I grew up with.
Yeah. So I know you've done wonders for increasing your vertical jump. But what, in your opinion, from a strength and conditioning perspective, do you feel is the biggest thing basketball players need to focus on from a performance aspect? That's a loaded question because it could go 1,000 different ways.
There's a lot
I
of
saw your
questions.
side there, and you're like, oh, that was a hard one.
If I had to say one thing in particular, in my opinion, one thing is like just stability and being able to move. Like, because I think a lot of guys like core stability and then stability the whole way down, because if you look at a lot of the basketball guys that I've watched train who are like pros or something like that, and everybody's seen like the posts, if you follow like LeBron or someone like that, they always are posting things where they're trying to stand on like a stability ball and do something with it or whatever. That's a little aggressive. I don't know how I like about that, but trying to balance on a stability ball and then do things. I don't know how I feel about that, but just the stability to be able to control like where you want to move back and forth. So basketball is a lot of change of direction. You got to be able to jump, land, be stable, jump again, move back and forth. So that's my opinion. I always felt like that was something that I did well because I was not the fastest person or the quickest person, strongest, whatever, so on and so forth. But I always felt like I didn't get injured and I was stable enough to where I can move into a position and like cut someone off and read an angle or something like that, and be able to, I'm trying to think of how to say it.
Well, I think you brought up a good point there. Josh and I talked about this in his podcast. Is like most injuries happen in deceleration when an athlete goes to change directions. I think in basketball, if we look at basketball, yes, the number one injury is deceleration, right? They go to change directions. You have a lot of non-contact knee injuries because they change directions. They don't have equal strength on right to left, so the energy transfer doesn't happen efficiently, and boom, you tear something. I think the other aspect from a stability, and not to hijack it here, is how often in basketball do you see multiple people go up for a rebound, and then your landing mechanics are thrown off. So if you're talking about stability, right, it's learning how to land, but then learning how to land kind of incorrectly, if you will.
In a bad situation.
In a bad situation. Like, how many of us can land on one leg efficiently, period? Most of us struggle.
Yeah.
But now if you have body contact on top of that, now you're looking at knee, ankle, tons of ankle injuries in basketball, right?
If I could tell you the number of dudes I've seen come down and just like roll their ankle off, like
I've done it.
or come down and step on somebody's foot and roll it and not be able to recover from it, it's insane.
Yeah, so I think it's, I think to your point, stability is probably, from an injury reduction standpoint, yes, but I think if you don't have adequate stability, the athlete just isn't going to be able to produce enough force, therefore, right? So I think that's a great point that you just brought up, the stability. And while you were talking, I was thinking about that. Like, oh, well, most injuries happen on decel, yes, but how many of these athletes are up in the air getting bumped around, and then they come down and they have a rolled ankle, or they have a knee injury, or even a hip injury from hitting the ground. So I can't tell you how many times I've bruised my tailbone or rolled my ankle from one of those. I'm sure you have as well. But so like if you were to look back at high school basketball version, Tristan.
Okay.
What do you wish you would have done to become a better player? Since unlike me, that wasn't that long ago. Actually, that was still what? 6 years now.
Yeah, it's like 6 years now.
Wow.
It's been a minute.
Wow.
What I wish I would have done more or done better.
Knowing what you know now, because you've done well with your training program and your vertical jump has gone up because so kind of thinking in that aspect, like what would you have done differently?
To even go off of that, so not necessarily like so much down a physical route, like a training route. I wish I personally would have listened to more people about certain things and done more research and listened to them, because the whole way I grew way before everybody else. So everybody, like when I started playing for real, they were like, oh, you're going to be in the post, you're going to grow, you're going to be like 6'4", so on and so forth. So I never learned like a ton of guard skills or anything like that. And then my grandpa, my mom, some of the other coaches I had the whole way up were like, dude, you need to learn, like you're going to stop. Like you're not going to be that tall. Like don't listen to people. Like you need to listen to us. You need to get your guard skills down. You need to learn how to do things, so on and so forth. And I didn't listen to them. And then by the time I got to high school, everyone caught up. Everybody went ahead of me. My ball handling was not where I needed to be. My quickness wasn't where I needed to be, so on and so forth. My understanding of where people needed to be, spacing, so on and so forth, wasn't where it needed to be. And so for that, I made it 8th grade year, freshman year, cut junior year, cut sophomore year, cut junior year, cut senior year. Didn't played rec the whole way. Granted, rec was fun, but it was something that I would have enjoyed if I would have listened to people ahead of time too. I feel like I was right there to possibly like being someone on the bench or something like that, just being able to ride out and be a practice player, which would have been fine for me. But I didn't listen to people ahead of that, so I didn't take the necessary steps. I didn't practice enough. I didn't listen to people. I didn't take it seriously enough. So I didn't get to where I wanted to be, and that's just how it was. So if you asked me back then, if I could go back and tell myself something, I'd been like, you need to sit down and you need to actually work, and if you don't want to work, then you don't need to actually do this. Like, you need to work on something else, and you need to just play rec.
You made a good point there. It's about taking the time to become a well-rounded player.
Yeah.
Like learning the skills necessary to be well-rounded to where if you need to play outside of your position, you can. And I think that's extremely important and it's extremely valuable. And I think you see it more now, I think, than ever before where
a lot of people
especially in basketball,
yeah.
how many centers all of a sudden can step out behind the three-point line and hit a three?
Pull it, yeah.
Right. Like 10 years ago that didn't happen. Like
Nope.
if you were a big man, you were a big man. Like you caught the ball, you turned and you put it in right away. You didn't dribble. You didn't
pass it out. Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't have any passing responsibilities. You surely were not going to shoot a three-pointer.
No.
That was outside the scope. So I think you brought up a very good point there too. But yeah, so I want to thank Tristan for coming on the podcast. And we appreciate your time. And if anybody has any further questions or wants to reach out to Tristan, you can find his contact information on our website. And he is, if you don't see him here in the facility, he's likely at Milford High School taking care of those athletes over there. So taking care of his alma mater, which I think is super cool, and I know he does as well. So thank you again.
No problem. Super fun.
Yeah, see, it was easy.
Good
Everybody's been dreading this, and it really isn't that bad. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next week with a new episode.